Good,
Yeah.
man. Nice
Yeah.
to see you.
And you, and you. Have a drink. Have a drink. It's going to be a long chat. All right. So
Oh,
I want you hydrated. And have you been training? Have you just been training?
no, I just comfortable. I
Good.
like your Cobra Kai t-shirt.
Yeah. Are you Team Cobra Kai or that other Danny?
Miyagi-Do.
Yeah.
I think the Miyagi-Do principles for sure. But
Yeah.
Cobra Kai is exciting.
It's exciting. Yeah. They strike hard and strike first, don't they? Terry, thanks for coming on. Honestly, I know you don't do many interviews, and I didn't know how to prepare for you. I didn't know where to put some scented candles, put some meditation music. So I've done absolutely nothing and just
That's
turned up.
perfect. That's perfect. Showing up is everything, my brother.
Yeah, it's a real honor. Honestly, it's a pleasure, and you brought your tree along with you as well. So thanks for doing that. But how have you been?
Bless, man. Um, Sat, one of the reasons why I don't really talk much is because it's just great to listen. And I've been listening to a lot of things more recently, including your podcast, which I think is great, by the way.
Thank you.
Um, and just listening for me has become like the new discovery. Um, I think I was hearing a lot of things my whole life, but I've learned the difference between, well, I think I've learned the difference between learning and hearing, listening and hearing. And that's how I've been. I've been in the state of listening.
Yeah, and you, there is a period in your life where you kind of transformed into this new Terry, and I kind of knew the old Terry. Was you? I mean, have you always been Terry? You wasn't like Terrence before, and then you turned into Terry Mardi, because you've been involved in music in all aspects, really, of music and creativity, films as well, like the films. Um, and I remember when I first started my podcast, I was not really media, but people said, "Oh, you need to contact Terry. Terry's a man." I go, "Terry, look." And I think he was one of the first people I added on Facebook in my foray into media. And
Oh, wow.
true story, right? And I thought, let's see what this guy is about. And you was about everything. He was about positivity, music, and owning your own rights, publishing, supporting brown voices, brown artists. You've done so much, and I was thinking, wow, this one man has done so much. It's really inspiring for me starting off. And I remember I asked you to come on my show back then as well, back in 2015. I'm sure I did, and
You did.
it didn't quite work out, but these things happen, and here you are now. But so when did your career start in music? You were a DJ before, if I remember rightly.
As a child, yes, but I just want to address divine timing because when you asked me in 2015 to come on your podcast, when you were doing the British Asian podcast, which again I followed and I listened to as many as I could, um, I don't think I really had anything to say because I'd just come to a stage at that 2015 where I just co-produced a TV show under the banner of Liger Films, which is a drama series, and I was just exhausted. So I think if you had spoken to me then, you would have got some murmurings and not much else. But music for me, going back to the big sort of, I guess, the origins of this form, which I can't even say anymore is this form because, our cells change so often that we're no longer, every 30 days, we're a completely different human being. And every second in the mind, we're a completely different human being. But I have a memory of when I was very small and before I was adopted, I used to have cassette tapes in my paternal home and used to chop them up physically, splice them and piece them together with Scotch tape. And so as a very small, almost like just a little bit older than a toddler, I would imagine, I wasn't allowed to hold, I knew it was too young because I wasn't allowed to hold scissors. So I had to get those special scissors from school with the round edges. So I knew that I was young, and this is sort of to give you an idea of the time frame. But anyway, I cut together tapes. So I had an affinity for sound, and later on in life, as an adult, realized that I have a condition called hyperacusis, which means I have a hypersensitivity to sound. But I didn't know that back then. But I was listening to the hisses and the hums and the tape, and I really enjoyed them. And I would try to almost pitch correct them using speed of the tape. But that's sort of where it all started. It started from, of course, listening to music in the household. You hear this a lot when you interview British people who are growing up in sort of the 80s. You realize that a lot of people had different influences. You had your ethnical influences from the people that you were raised by, but you also had your outside influences. And I've heard many of your guests talk about that, and I've always been nodding profusely saying, yes, I totally understand that. So it started there and then evolved into later staying up late at night listening to Choice FM and other black music radio stations to write down names of songs that really resonated with me. And what resonated with me was always soul music, music of the soul, music that spoke to the struggle. And I think that because I saw a lot of that in my own life, even as a child, I was able to somehow relate, although I couldn't relate to the American soul situations because they were predominantly a black storyline. But I could relate to it from being a minority group in the UK in the oppression topics they would come up. So they sort of resonated with me deeply.
Yeah. And did you find a kind of escape into music, a solace, a place to kind of be yourself and, in a sense, kind of hide almost?
Yeah, I think at the time I felt I could find a refuge in music. I felt I could go to the shared room. I was an adopted child at this point and was raised in a household with many different cultures from all over the world. It was like the United Colors of Benetton in every sense of the word, and so many of us. If you get a quiet moment, you take advantage of it. And what I did was I took advantage of that with music. And, we were raised on a very low income. And so we made do with what we had. So a lot of the records and things that I had available to me were hand-me-downs. And that's where I guess the music apart from radio, the music I listened to was sort of older music, sort of baby boomer generation music and older. So I got to experience that from childhood.
Yeah, and you talk about music. There's obviously something within sound and vibrations. You can hear. You don't need lyrics as such. Even I mean, for babies, I've got small children, and when they were babies, you could put a song on, and they'll stop crying. And they'll look around. It was some kind of it's like magic, and I did use that quite a lot actually, raising them with music. So just to keep them quiet. But it's also about memories. Do you ever sometimes listen back to those songs from that time period? Does it kind of transport you back in time as a reminder of your childhood?
It will, and it does. The past 12 years of my life, I've been immersed in neuroscience and the cognitive performance surrounding music and the brain. And my latest foray into anything close to a business is Nada Brahma, which means the universe is sounds from the Sanskrit Vedas. And before the Big Bang, there was Nada Brahma, and the universe ultimately is sound, and frequencies are all around us and all within us. Every cell in your body right now, all listeners listening right now, every cell in your body is vibrating, and it's vibrating at a rate. We call that rate hertz now, thanks to a man called Mr. Hertz, and that's sort of oscillations or movements per minute. And we now look at that as a way to measure, and science is all about measuring. So now we can measure it, but innately, as you mentioned, children know that we are sound. It all starts, if you want to get sort of spiritual about it, it all starts with the heartbeat and the hums and the sounds within the womb. But if you want to go even further back, the sound of what does it sound like to conceive? What does it sound like for the sperm and the egg to meet and connect and fertilize? we may not have the hearing tools and capacity in our own ears, because the human ear only really hears 20 hertz to 20,000 hertz in young humans. By the way, it decreases over time. If once you hit about 30 years old, human years old, Gregorian years old, you start to lose some of that. So a lot of Japanese kids have invented ringtones that are higher than 17,000 hertz. So only they can hear it, and their parents can't. Very clever. So, of course, memories, there's evidence now that sound can help people with Alzheimer's, and I'm on the autistic spectrum, and I know that sound for me is more than just entertainment. Sound for me is medicine, and it's a way for me to get through my day. Without it, quite frankly, without these earphones that I'm wearing now, I wouldn't be able to function. I would actually keel over and probably have anxiety attacks, and fall into states of depression. So music for me is a medicine. Music for everybody out there probably is a medicine too, even if they don't realize it.
Definitely. And you mentioned just earlier there, you said if you want to get spiritual, and what a shocking twist, our interview's gone into a spiritual path, Terry. Who would have thought, hey? But talking to you, but that's so deep, a lot of it, and I resonate a lot with that. And for me, when I talk to people on these podcasts, it's like I've had my headphones on, I get in the zone, and I kind of flow with the person I'm interviewed. They could be slightly hyper, and I get kind of hyper, and I kind of mirror them, and not on purpose. Kind of, it just happens, right? And you're very calm, and it's kind of calmed me down a bit. I was slightly hyper before because I was running a little bit late today, and it's amazing how that can work. And I think we've kind of lost a bit of that communication skill, to sit down with people and to talk. And I don't mean on WhatsApp, no phones, and without distractions, and like a place where you're sitting in nature. And because there's a massive difference between sitting with someone in Costa, having a coffee and talking, than sitting in nature. And, when that's a pure conversation, and it really makes you work hard to talk, and I know a lot of people struggle to talk. A lot of artists that come on sometimes struggle in the beginning to talk and to communicate, and we're kind of almost losing that it's not even a skill, that innate ability of ours to communicate. I mean, that's how we survived, right, as humans, by communicating with each other. Big dinosaur over there. Get the fuck over there, right? That's kind of how we survived all these years. So music, it's way more important than just music for you. It's kind of saved your life in a sense, right?
It is life. It's sound is life. Sound, inaudible sound as well. I don't want you to just think that it's just our five senses that we utilize. There's inaudible sound. And inaudible sound really talks about the feelings of some presence. And any audio engineers out there or music producers will understand this on a very basic level. If you're talking about sub-bass, a lot of bass heads in the world, you don't really hear 20 hertz, which is the realest lowest frequency. You don't really hear it. You feel it. And we look at things like resonance and timbre. Timbre and resonance, these are essentially words that describe the vibrations of music. So, if you've ever been to a club or an event or a festival or anywhere with a big speaker, you feel that rumbling in your chest when the bass is kicking. Well, that vibration is just a very low vibration. Now that's at 20 hertz. Take it 10 to 12 hertz lower, and you're around 7.83 hertz. That's called Schumann resonance. That's the vibration of the planet Earth. And when we sit in nature and we tune ourselves, like you tune to your guests, you tune to me now, the harmonics, when we tune like that to Mother Earth, we start to feel her. And it's really this opportunity that we have in nature, whilst we still have nature in this global crisis of global climate change, the way we pollute our world, that the UK, we're very grateful that we have trees, but we have lost most of our forests. We have the lowest forest count in all of Europe, in the UK. It's tragic. And we need to speak to policymakers, we need to speak to big business, we need to speak to all sorts of people. But the average general public, Joe Blowers like us, we had the opportunity to take advantage of this nature, because consciousness is the fabric, is the fiber of the universe. It's made of everything. And that consciousness, when we vibe together, you've heard that phrase, we just vibe together, we're on the same vibe. That's exactly the same thing as vibing with the planet Earth. And when we do that, ideas seemingly just sort of come to us. You know, inspired people are essentially people who are vibrating at the same frequency as whatever frequency that's being received, almost like a radio receiver receiving a transmission. You've got to tune yourself to pick up the radio signal, right? You don't suddenly switch over the radio station to a dumber radio and that other channels didn't stop broadcasting. We just don't tune into it anymore. So tuning is a really useful word that I'd like to use, is that if we can tune into our potential, if we can tune into our state of being and tune into each other, using voice, using touch, and using all 33 of our senses, we're going to get on just fine. And not only that, we're going to understand more about the universe, and even more important than that, we're going to understand what we are, not who, not identity, not name, not nationality, not color of skin, but what are we? And that's where things get really interesting. And that's where I've been listening and sitting out in nature as much as possible to be a receiver tuning in to the greatest radio station in the world. Not that one, Mother Earth, Mother Nature. So,
no, yeah. I think you're absolutely right. And I think that art of tuning into people and to people that you've never met before, if we can build on that, because I think we're living in a world where a lot of people have lost their knobs, their tuning knobs, right? And
very good.
Thank you. I'm going to keep that bit. And I like to pride myself on that. I can talk to anyone. That's kind of I like that. I like to meet people that I've never met before, and I think, what are you into? That's quite interesting. Why do you do that? I like that, and but I know not everyone's confident or willing to do that. And I think we live in a world where we just don't want to try. We don't want to know about the other person. We're into our little cliques and bubbles and our niches. Talk about niche businesses and niche this and niche music and niche styles. We've kind of enclosed ourselves, Whereas I want to be open, man. I want to talk to everyone, right?
I sense that. I sense that about you. You've got. Would you describe yourself as an introvert, an ambivert, or an extrovert? Do any of those things resonate with you, or would you not even go into that sort of classing?
No, I you know what? I'm a bit of an introvert sometimes. I like my own space. I like to be on my own. But I get to a point where I think, I need to talk to other humans now. I need to, because originally the other podcast, the British Asian podcast, started because I was in a really shit place. I was kind of depressed. I was in depression, and I was masking the depression through drink and drugs, which worked great for a while until they stopped working, right? So, but then I wanted to talk to people and think, well, how are they doing that? How they making music? How they becoming stand-ups and seemingly happy? And that's how it started. So I thought, I'll ask them, and I'll record it as well, and I'll put it out there on the internet. But it was very interesting because I learned so much about them. It was kind of they seemed confident from the outside and everything seemed great. But when you peel away the layers, they were just human and just the same as me. And they had the same fears as me. But they just seemed to have sort of, pushed through it. And I never had the confidence to do that at the beginning, to push through my fears. And they kind of did, but they still had the fears, and it was such an eye-opener. And then I realized, like you said, we're not, we shouldn't class ourselves as brown, white, ethnics or whatever. we're just human, and we are all the same. You know, we do fear and we do love, and you know, we are looking for the same thing, some kind of contentment in life, and we find it in all different places. And look how deep you've got me going, Terry. You know, this is what happens on a certain. I've tuned into the wrong radio station.
You've always been deep, and really what happens is we've just met each other at that deep frequency. See, you mentioned typecasting ourselves and that sort of thing. The reality is we're all of the things that we want to be and all the things that we choose to see. And it's really the choice which is what matters. If we were to invest in our choices and invest in the process of how we make our choices, just to sort of get a little bit of our consciousness aware of, you know, okay, what's informing this choice right now? When I say I am anything, I am ... What's informing that choice? Is it my need to fit in? Is it my need to feel part of something, or a sense of belonging? Having an informed choice is your right. It's everybody's right. So it's important to explore all of the different things that I am, whatever I is. And you may come to, at various stages in your life, certain conclusions. And you may say that I am brown and I am British, I am Asian, or you may say none of those things. That's okay. There's nothing wrong. Don't wrong yourself. It's important to be kind to yourself at all times. But what's really important is just being sure in that moment that that's what you feel. Now, in 5 minutes' time, you may change your perception. Again, be okay with that change. And this may happen incrementally millions of times a day. Mm. Just being okay with those little changes removes the discomfort from just being, and then doesn't force us to fall into the trap of becoming doers. Because when we do things, often we do things with an agenda. And I would say one of the things that we need to start doing as a society is start doing things that are consciously serving us and what we stand for. And there's nothing wrong with that. Even if it is perceived by someone else to be wrong, everybody's truth is their truth. So wrong and right to me have evaporated. It's your journey in your lifetime, which, by the way, isn't linear at all. Don't subscribe to that. It doesn't start with started here and ends there. It doesn't work like that to me. But whatever the momentary being, because that's all you have. You don't have the past, you don't have the future. They don't exist. Yet we invest so much of our choices in those things. And then we wonder why we're so dissatisfied. You see? So there's nothing wrong with those denominations. There's nothing wrong with those things if you truly feel it. And so more power to you if that's what you feel.
I mean, the point of living in the past or the future even, that was me. That was exactly where I lived. I lived in the past thinking about all the regrets I had. Should have done this, should have done that. You know, maybe if I did that, I could have made it, man. I could have been a contender, right? Or the future. You know, I'm a loser. I'm not really going to do anything in my life. This is where I'm going to be. I'm just going to drink, and you know. So I wasn't actually living in the moment. And then as soon as I did, it's fantastic because you lose that weight. That backpack is taken off with all that resentment and worry about the future. It always makes me laugh now when my kids worry about the future. And I said, you're worrying about something that might not happen, you know. And as I walked, and they were kind of thinking, oh, right, yeah, he's right. And I walked away kind of thinking, yeah, kind of know my stuff now, right? And I was kind of proud myself, but that was me back in obviously they don't know, but that's what I used to worry about, things that never used to happen. My worry was so extreme. It never, you know, it's the worst case scenario, right? And it never happened. And the past, you know, is the past. We can't change the past. We can learn from it, obviously, and try and adjust our direction so we don't make the same mistakes. But that took me a long time to learn. I was, you know, way in my mid-30s, I think, by the time I was learning this stuff, so it's not, if people are listening out there now thinking, they are worried about their past, or they regret their past, and they're worried about their future, don't, honestly, it's be in the moment. And I think that's why I know you're so much into being as one with nature. I mean, you love trees and you like to go for walks and hiking. And I think this lockdown COVID has forced myself and my family to do nature walks, because we can't go to enclosed places like, theme parks.
Yeah.
Pure consumerism, and to restaurants and bowling. So we had to go out into nature. And it's been the most fantastic thing I ever done in my life. My kids love it. I mean, we're walking around. I live in Yorkshire, right? And as you know, there's amazing places in Yorkshire, right? And I went to a nature reserve. My kids saw a swan for the first time. And I don't know, I'm sure you've seen a swan, but they're fucking massive.
Yeah, they are.
They're not what they look like on TV. They are big birds, right? And I've never seen one in real life, right? Wow. My kids were like, they all got a bit scared, but it's just their moments of seeing their little faces, because they're into fairies and Swan Lake, and things like that. And I'm a big fan of nature walks and being out in the open. It's just something so calming about it. And you come back and it's not like, you're not stressed about the hustle and bustle of meeting all these people and making sure you got a parking space in the, in the cinema or whatever. And I think COVID's probably helped a lot of people. But what do you think? There's still a clamour to go abroad, isn't there? To go to these all-inclusive Benidorm, and people can't wait to travel, can they? I don't know what's wrong with people.
The curious mind. But we forget that we are nature. We forget that. We almost see nature as that reserve, that park, that swan. But when you strip away our clothes, underneath, we're exactly the same thing. We're just the same beast. We are nature. The outerverse, the multiverse, the universe, all of the external verses, they're all mirrors of the innerverse. And it's only, and that might sound like woo-woo to somebody listening who maybe they thought they were going to get a funny guy that used to wear a top hat on this interview, and maybe they're disappointed. I make no apology for that. But I do say that these are the things that have become important to me in this journey. Because when I was putting on the top hat, or going to the cinema, or worrying about parking spaces, or talking about the city hustle and bustle, when I was doing that, I wasn't being anything. I was just doing stuff. And people have built up my name as someone that did a lot of stuff. The intro to this podcast even. And I agreed to talk to you because doing's cool, right? It gets you some stuff. But there's nothing like just being. There is no reward greater than being. There is none. And I challenge my older self at this every day, the one that lives inside me, to say, hey, Terry, you thought you were something. The ego loves that. The ego loves that. But the humbling of nature, climb a mountain, go to the peak. You're near the peaks. Go to the peaks. Climb the peaks in the Peak District. When you get to the top, let's see how much of an ego we have. Because when we are at the bottom, we're faced with this opportunity, and your soul is tested in that moment. Am I going to conquer this? Forget the business challenges, this human-made currency stuff. That's all well and good. Cool, I get that. I'm not saying don't do that stuff. Make as much money as you want, but don't let that define who you are or how you feel or your self-worth. If you want to really feel challenged, go out into nature. Nature will challenge you. The most important thing, I just want to share something about water. See, water is a paradox. Water finds the lowest ground to travel, right, on Earth. It does that. It finds the divots and the holes and the streams, and it finds the lowest. And it is so maneuverable, it's so malleable that it can fit into anything. You put water into a cup, it becomes the cup. You put water into a saucer, it becomes the saucer. But it finds in nature, it finds the lowest point. Now, if we were to learn a lesson from that, we could humble ourselves and go to the lowest point, and then recognize that the same water, paradoxically, has the immense power to wipe out a city in the form of a tsunami or a flood. The same water set. And this is the thing, that when we start to recognize that we are that when we are so humble and trying to sort of go find the lowest point, there is a magic to that. Whereas the ego wants to go to the highest point. We've got to silence that and listen to the true knowing, the true being inside, and go, well, that's where I want to go. And it's only when you get there, nothing I say on this podcast is ever going to emulate what actually is experienced. It's something you have to just try for yourself. You know, all this stuff is experiential. Like academics and people like me can talk about this stuff all day long. It means nothing. Life is to be experienced. You can talk about it all you want, which is why I don't listen to any kind of sages and people that sort of talk about stuff, because they're not doing it a lot of the time. They're saying it, they're giving it all that, but they're not actually living it. So the only real teachers that I really want to look up to, the people actually doing it, and are being it. And they're the ones I'm like, oh, okay, let me watch them. Just like when we were kids, you know, your children watched you stand up straight on your hind legs, or your two legs. Yeah, not hind legs. You're not a four-legged creature. Maybe you are. I don't know.
I'm a unicorn.
Yeah. There you go. So they watched you, right? And then you stood upright. So that, you know, we've always been observant. It's very simple, so we don't have to overcomplicate things. But you know, water is one element, and you can learn lessons from all the elements.
Yeah, I mean, there's been points in my life when I've been listening to you now. I remember I had a chance to go to Petra in Jordan, and there's a point where you can walk up a path and you get right to the top of the mountain. And we were kind of teenagers, you know, about 17, 18 or so. And anyway, we got to the top. We looked out and we're taking our pictures. But there's a moment I was looking out and I realized that we are so ignorant. We're nothing. As a human being, the vast expanse of that desert. And I thought, I remember this thought. I thought, if I was to go now, no, my friends would care, obviously, my family, but really the world wouldn't really care, because we're such a small part of it. We're a grain of sand. And I think at that moment, listening to you now, what really happened was my ego was pushed right down. And it was so apparent to me there in that experience that you're absolutely nothing really. And as we, in the nicest possible sense, but as we came down the steps and we got back to the kind of the camp, the ego starts coming back. You know, what we're gonna eat, where we're gonna go. You know, give me fun, give me things. I want things. You know, and it's forgotten. And just by listening to you now, I remember that point of being, you know, just standing there on my own. And it's the first time I was abroad, away from my family as well. And I think that experience. So we kind of lose that now, and sometimes I try and seek that somehow by being on my own, you know. And it's I think it's getting more and more difficult. Terry, you've been around a long time. I'm not saying you're old. You've been around a long time, and you've seen so many trends and changes in media and arts and music, and you know, you're probably roughly the same age as me. You saw the advent of the mobile phone and a device, you know, the Nokia. I'm sure you had a Nokia, especially that guy with a top hat would have had a Nokia, right? And this device has slowly become integrated within us, in our being. I mean, it's stuck to our bloody hands, you know, everywhere we go. And I worry about the youth, the youngsters of today, that they're so they're so focused on this device and sharing and photos and Instagram and Facebook that they're going to have it even harder than we did. You know,
We have got a responsibility to ourselves to try our best to rein in ourselves from the power of media. My former self was working in media. We owned TV channels, websites, we had shares in radio stations and magazines, over 50 businesses in the media. And I can tell you from the inside that we manipulated millions of people into buying things when we were in the media. That's the business model of the media. It's all funded, it's all advertorial, it's all selling something. And it's a very powerful tool. And we manipulated, as I said, millions of people over decades. And I don't feel like people really understand the power of this persuasive power. Truly, the news, all of these things, all outlets have an agenda, sometimes a bias that is even unconscious. It's really important. We have a responsibility to ourselves to think for ourselves. We have a responsibility to ourselves to know our own barometer, our own yardstick, our own measure, not by the standards of other people, but by the standards by which resonate deep with our hearts and our souls. There's fundamental rules that live within us. We know the difference between what serves us and what doesn't, what is right and wrong. We know that. There's an inner knowing. Go there. Know it. Fall back in love with it. And walk around the world using that and see what happens. That's all.
Mm.
No doctrine, no dogma. Science is a dogma. Science has its own dogma. It's the new religion. Everybody wants to now talk about quantum mechanics. It's exactly the same thing that all the major religions talked about thousands of years ago, just a different language. And now we need proof of it. Why? We trust scientists more than we trust ourselves. We do not need science to prove to us what we already innately know as children. We do not need it. Your children do not need that, and they're closer to the womb than we are. So we need to go back and regress into ourselves in order to understand that when we are the womb child, when you're the womb Sat and I'm the womb Terry and the womb listeners out there, when we're that version of ourselves, and suddenly when you do that, everything becomes weightless. Because when you trust yourself, you don't have the fear because you've got nothing to hold on to. There's no raft that's floating away from you when the Titanic sinks that you're thinking, oh, I'm not going to survive because there's no one there to save me. You trust yourself to kick yourself out of that water. And so a lot of these things are all about understanding that there is an outside force and there's this inner force. And if we go and sort of channel this inner force and we understand what it is, really know who you are. And a simple way of doing that is just going back to your childhood and just sort of looking at all the cartoons you used to watch and sort of the beautiful things that you used to enjoy. And I think a lot of people sort of do that sort of midlife, and the world has given it a name and tried to toxify it by calling it a midlife crisis. It's not a midlife crisis, my friends. It's a midlife recognition that we've come far away from something that we once were, and we just want to get closer to it. So when you want to go and pick up that Cobra Kai t-shirt, or when you want to go and buy that red sports car, or you want to go and pick up a hobby that you once did when you were a child, you're just going back to the very essence of who you truly were at one point, where you felt more whole than you do today. And there's nothing wrong with that. But look at the world does. They call it a midlife crisis. They make movies about it. They terminology, because then if they create a problem, they can then sell you the cure.
Yeah.
Masters of manipulation. And I was in it, and now I'm out. And so I'm going to tell my friends about it.
Yeah. So yeah, obviously that was a big chunk of your life as well, of all that work you did. Do you look back and I know it's a difficult question. We talked about not regretting the past. Do you sometimes look back and say to yourself, you know, maybe I should have been more ethical, or maybe I should have listened to my gut feeling? Because you know, sometimes when you're trying to sell something, you know, don't you, deep down, you know, I'm trying to push something onto people, and but or do you still see it as, you know, that's kind of what the way it was?
I subscribe to the first sort of disclaimer idea that you mentioned, is that there are no regrets. If I truly knew that what I was doing at the time was that ethical, I would have halted midway. There was clearly a power and an agenda, and I had good intentions at the time. It was to, you know, by selling you something, I could then go and get my ma some medicine. You know, there was always something good that I had, that we all want to do. So there's no sort of point beating yourself up about what's there. But when you get different perspectives over life, they do shape you. And it's that experience, as I mentioned earlier, is really important. It's just to go with the experience of it. Because academically, when we talk about these sorts of things, it's almost like talking about the future. We never really know how we're going to behave until you're really there. So even going into that, it could be potentially toxic to ourselves. But I think it's really important for us to learn from, share these stories, so that perhaps someone else listening might be able to catch themselves if they feel next time they're selling. And on the point of selling, we're not just selling. See, there's three things that we sell: services, products, and ideas. And everyone's selling all the time. We can't avoid it. Even when you're trying to meet a mate, even when you're trying to make friends at first day at school, you're selling yourself. It's why we show our teeth. We show our teeth, like chimpanzees do, to each other, to show that we are friendly and we have nothing to hide. The handshake was invented because in the days of the pistol, you wanted to prove to the other cowboys that there was no gun in your hand. Namaste is the same thing. It's to say that I see the light within you. So we're selling our idea that what I'm seeing, because we're not all telepathically attuned. But selling has sort of become sort of dirty, and sort of, because it's I mean, when I say selling, it's sort of, selling can be good and selling can be positive too. Selling can be useful. The ego can be useful, because if it wasn't for your ego, you wouldn't wake up and brush your teeth or make an effort, you know. So the ego does give you self-preservation, but it's just, we need to know the limits of where the ego is useful and where it starts becoming destructive and counterproductive. And that's really where the balance is. And life is all about balance. So I think that, you know, where I am now is sort of reflecting on those sorts of parts of my life and going, cool, you were there. You now have been gifted the knowledge of that experience, and that experience, now you can go and share that. So that's where I choose to be.
Yeah. And I'm kind of glad you're there, because you're kind of someone I tune into when I get a little bit wobbly myself. Do you know what I mean? And I think I'm going to go listen to Terry for a bit, or see a couple of his posts. And I remember a point where you shared, this is before Black Lives Matter, with a media blackout, you used to post just a black square on your Instagram. And I remember the first time I saw it, I think, what the fuck? Why's he put a black square on here, right? What's wrong with Terry? Where's his selfie? Behind a car, a sports car, you know. But then I got it. I was thinking, why should we be told by Instagram or Silicon Valley to post things, fake things even, you know? We post what we want. We have our control. That was I thought, this is what I perceived it to be, is your sort of siren to say, you know what? I control myself. I control what I post. And if I want to post a black square or a white square with nothing on it, with no text, that's what I'm going to do. You know?
Yeah, it was a bit of a protest.
Yeah, I sensed that. And you didn't say it was a protest, because that would
I didn't.
That would defeat the point of not saying anything, right? So, but I got it. I thought he's protesting against, and then I started seeing the odd other white and black square from other people. And it's kind of a beautiful little silent protest, wasn't it? That you didn't say nothing, but people kind of got it, right? And they were, I don't know if they completely got it, but they joined in, right? And but I understood it. I thought, you know what, he's saying to the man, you know, I'm still me. I'm not controlled by an app.
Yeah, I can think my own thoughts.
Yeah.
When George Orwell wrote 1984 in the year 1948, and if anyone's read that book, they'll understand that a time will come where all machines will second guess what we're thinking, and that time is here. And also, the other game I was playing by doing that, and will continue to play, is that the pictures became more important than the words. There's all this beautiful space to write a caption and share parts of your heart. And I know Instagram started off life as a visual photographer's paradise, but since it got purchased, it became something else. But got purchased by Facebook, and it became a very powerful tool for them to mine data about us. And it's all one thing, giving our information, volunteering our information to blue chips, and understanding that it's sort of vanity metrics that we're really seeking. And that's a whole debate that I won't get into today. But what about the captions? Is anybody paying attention to anybody more? Because what really sort of disturbs me sometimes is when I'm thinking about how we behave online versus how we behave in the real world. And the comment sections are really quite disturbing, because we seem to have this feeling that we can go up to complete strangers in the street and say, you're ugly, or I don't like your hat or your jacket, or that was a horrible piece of art that you made. We wouldn't do it in real life. Yet we feel behind our keyboards, we can go up to people on their profiles and say it to them on there. And I feel it's such a double standard that if you really were to look yourself in the face, in the eye, in the soul, and ask yourself, is that who you are? Are you somebody that just denounces somebody and judges them and makes them feel small? I think there's a little bit of seeking to do. And there was a long time where I'm only talking about myself when I say this, but I did that. When I was doing my video diaries, I was pointing the camera at other people and criticizing them. And that's why I won't do video diaries anymore, because I made people feel small. And I apologize to anyone that I made feel small. I thought I was just trying to show the truth. And I realized that people were laughing at my jokes, and my ego got bigger, my top hat got bigger, my clothes got brighter, but my soul got blacker. And I am sorry for that. And the way I'll make amends for that is moving forward. I'm not the man I used to be. And maybe people don't mind it. Maybe people go, what are you talking about, Terry? It wasn't that bad. Well, that's just a realization that I've had. And we've all got these realizations, these little moments. It happened. Glad I did it, because if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't have the lesson that I'm sitting with today, right? And I wouldn't be able to share it. So It's all beautiful, man. It's just, we've got to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. And the sooner we do that, the more we can start enjoying life again.
Yeah. What was there? Do you remember that particular point where you metaphorically and probably literally took off that top hat and, put it on the shelf? And do you remember that point where you're thinking, you know what, this Terry is no more? Do you still have the top hat somewhere? Do you?
I gave the top hat away to a friend of mine, and they still have it. It's still in the hat box. I had a collection of them, actually. I distributed them to people. I remember at the time sort of becoming a minimalist, and I just wanted to give everything away. And that I did that for years. I gave everything away. So they're all out there somewhere. Someone else is enjoying them. But I couldn't, I just couldn't stop giving things away. And then eventually got to the point where I only have 2 bags worth of stuff and a tent.
Yeah.
And that's what I have. The shirt on my back, a few items. And I haven't been, hand on heart, I haven't been happier since coming out of the womb.
And just, there's a writer I follow in America. His name escapes me, but he did the same. he's quite a rich guy, and he used to rent anyway. He never owned property, and he started giving his stuff away. He said, he goes, I got too much clutter. He started off with his CDs and his books. He had a lot of books. And so he started collecting his books on his Kindle instead. So he goes, I can give away my physical books. And he just started feeling lighter and lighter. And eventually he ended up a bit like yourself with a bag.
Mm.
And he goes, I've never felt happier. He had a MacBook Air, he had his phone, and he had a bag. And he goes, I'm fine. He goes, I can survive. I never needed that stuff. I just thought I needed it. And his writing's still great. Nothing's changed about him, you know. If anything, his writing's improved. He's got that experience now, you know. And it's, I think we accumulate stuff. Like, do we regress back to being cavemen, and you know, where we need to keep things just in case shit happens? I might need to keep that 15 suitcases on top of my wardrobe.
Yeah.
You know, it's things. I've got a lot of things myself. You know, sometimes it's too much. You know, I've got adapters, lights, microphone. I don't know how many microphones I've got. I only need bloody one. Do you know what I mean? It's just things. Why do I need 5? Don't need 5, you know. And my phone, I'm looking at my phone. Don't want to get the iPhone 11X, but I want a Max Pro, obviously, right? But do I need it? No, I don't. My phone's working fine, but there's an urge in me. I don't know whether that's consumerism being pushed towards me to get it, and I fight it sometimes. But I'll give in at one point, I'm sure. But it's a very interesting that you gave everything away, but then became happier. It seems an oxymoron, doesn't it? It doesn't seem it should work.
Yeah.
But, you know, but
it does.
You give away things, and it's a bit like when you give away love, you know, unconditionally.
It's exactly like that's exactly what I was thinking.
You know, you give
There's
it away.
a beautiful song, and it goes like this. We used to sing it at school, and it's like, love is something if you give it away, give it away, give it away. Love is something if you give it away, you end up having more. It's just like a magic penny. Hold it tight and you won't have many. Lend it, spend it, and you'll have so many. They'll roll all over the floor. For love is something if you give it away. Give it away. Give it away. We used to sing that at school. And it's a beautiful, beautiful message.
Yeah. I was going to join in then, and I was going to use this as the promo for your interview, just to mess with everyone's heads. Now, what's this? So maybe at the end we'll sing it, right? And
we'll sing it again at the end.
Yeah, at the end. But it's very much like love, isn't it? You just give it away unconditionally. You don't want nothing back. You're just being kind, and say, you know, like for my kids, you know, I give them unconditional love. I don't want nothing back from them, really, and they're so happy, and they give it to me, and they don't want nothing. You know, it's a pure thing. It's just a pure thing, right? And I think we need to move towards that. Not me and you, because we're spiritually up here, ain't we? So, but other people, other crazy people out there. We just need to be a bit kinder, don't we, in the world? I always like you talking about comments on, and I know what you mean, and I read them sometimes about say an album or single comes out, people saying, "Oh, shit," and I was thinking, you know, this person's put their time and effort into making this, you know, long nights and, you know, and the blood, sweat and tears have gone into this. It's a single, you know, and they've put it out, they made a video and everything. And your first thought in your head is to type it's shit. You know, at least if you're going to be disparaging, at least be a bit creative, like an Oscar Wilde kind of troll.
Yeah.
You know,
constructive, maybe
constructive or something. Try it at least, and you know, you made the effort. But then I think the way I've started looking at trolls is that they're kind of sad and themselves internally. There's some shallowness in them, you know, where they're alone. You know, whether they live with people or not, they're alone inside. You know, and it's a dark place for them. So I've started to pity them almost, because I couldn't do it. It's not within my DNA to be that nasty to people when they create something, because I create things and I know it takes time and effort, and but that's what I mean about these phones. We're talking about in the future. 1984. It's one of my favorite books. You could.
Great book.
It's a fantastic book and visionary. It's the point of whether if anyone hasn't read the book, you definitely need to. That should be a standard reading for all schools, I think. To put that you can't have any ideas, and have propaganda, don't they? Where they have them bits of paper and they cut them out of paper and they burn them. So in case someone reads it, 50,000 people died. Let's cut that out because we're losing the war. It's a great book, honestly. And I'm surprised me and you didn't write that. It was obviously right this kind of thing we're into, right? And but the future, I think, we're even talking about integrated technology now, where we're literally going to have chips implanted in us. We can walk into an office instead of having the little card, because obviously that's too much hard work to get out a card to swipe in. I just want to put my palm on there. That's actually happening. I think it's in Europe somewhere. There's companies. I think it's a Dutch or a German company that. Yeah, and there's a reporter who said, I'll put a chip in me, and it's just that's science fiction. In reality, today, now it's happening. That was in comic books for me when I was growing up, and I just thinking what's going to happen in the next 10 years. I mean, this phone is kind of literally with us now. It's part of us, right? And the future, we could. My worry is my kids will be living in a virtual reality world, and they'll be a lot more happier in the virtual reality world than they will in this world. That's a real worry.
The first thing I'll say is don't worry, because in the 1950s, and when they were making the Jetsons, they thought the year 2000 was going to be flying cars. I would say that worrying solves nothing, so I wouldn't worry. I would say that a better use of your energy would be start giving your children the knowledge necessary for that when that time should it come, for them to have such a free thinking mind that they won't subscribe to the ideas, and the future generations will either just move around those concepts or create alternatives. There are innovators in everybody. We never know, just because they are going to create something, why can't we become the they and create? And the only reason I'm back in business in science now is because I understand that there are some very intelligent people out there that are creating anxiety and stress and mental illness through their media and their propaganda. But I also believe in myself and my team that we are equally, if not more intelligent than those super smart people to be able to create the antidote to their mess. In fact, we think that we're going to prevent more mental health issues than they're going to be able to even think about creating. And when you come with it, not out of arrogance, but just with that love for just humanity, that's what really drives you. So I would say, don't worry, channel that and just start getting innovative and create the world that you want to create. I think those that live in fear, game's over for you. A lot of the fear mongering is there to rehabilitate you so that you either fight, flight, or freeze. I'm not going to freeze in fear. I'm certainly not going to take off until it's my time to vanish and transform. So while I'm here, I'm going to fight the good fight. And we've all got that choice. And so if anyone out there is worried, I hope you're not going to be worried after this, because you know what? Your girls are going to create an amazing world. Let's empower them and enrich them, because they are the young minds of tomorrow. They've got the energy. They're going to have more time than we've got. And it's up to us to enrich them. So let's do that.
Yeah. I mean, you're talking about your business and the kind of technologies you're creating, and you're investing in science now. I mean, what are you creating? You're not creating an app that just posts black pictures.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm creating.
It's not going to work, Terry. It's not going to work.
Yeah.
But what are you kind of, mental health is such an important, I think people are so much more aware of people and mental health and how it affects people. It's become such a big issue, which is a great thing. We're talking about it, at least, you know, back in the 80s, in my day, that, you know, cheer up.
Yeah.
What's wrong with him? Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Man
just,
up, cheer up,
cheer up,
get
you
on
know,
with it.
get on
all
with
of those
it.
kind of phrases.
Yeah, what's wrong with you? You know,
What's wrong with you?
and the thing is, the person didn't know themselves what was wrong with them, because there was not that kind of education out there, you know. And I remember my parents would talk about so and so, and because I love talking about so and so, right? They would say, "He's sort of judge about you. He's in faults." You know, do you mean that term? You know, sort of judge about you. He just thinks about, you know, he's got depression. Obviously, we know that now. But so, I mean, how are you and your team kind of trying to combat this, or trying to help in your way? What are you doing exactly?
So Nada Brahma is the name of the company, and what we're trying to do at Nada Digital is create. Essentially, we've understood what sound really is. The music industry does not understand what sound is. It's funny because they're selling streaming music and they don't even understand what sound is, the actual maths of it. And we've understood that. And so our IP, our intellectual property, is that knowing, and it's an engine that we're creating that can help everybody understand what the sound is doing to their brain, what it's doing to their mood, what it's doing to their performance. And so you're looking at redefining what music is beyond the just .mp3, .wav file. There's other fields of information that we are able to curate and collect. There's biodata that we're able to track. There's many fields. So it's essentially the science of data and the science of understanding what music truly is, and then delivering that in various forms, really, from mind, body, and spirit, from performance in the workplace to athletes being able to get that extra second on their gold medal 100-meter sprint, to just getting through your day or avoiding getting into your little slumps. So the values are all there. It's just sort of trying to wrap like I said, the modern day dogma of science around that, so that people can start to use it with knowledge and insights. A lot like we talk of it, we tend to talk of it as musical nutrition. Before 1991, when the FDA decided that meat and 2 veg was what you need to eat, but they didn't really know what macros were. I guess what we've done is we've taken that nutritional label of macronutrients, proteins, fibers, carbohydrates, starch. We understand that we've done a similar breakdown for music. So we know that there's thousands of different macros of music. So now we're labeling music in that way. So we can listen to a piece of music and we can create thousands of different macros from it, which over time will sort of give you more of a healthy insight into what that song is doing to you.
So if you're macro deficient in a certain area, you could choose that particular song.
Yes.
Wow, that's
the system.
amazing.
The system will create it for you.
That's amazing. That's actually, I've got pumped thinking about that, because that's actually makes complete sense to me, because obviously I'm into macros and diet and nutrition, and musically that will make sense, because so look at your biodata and to see which parts you're deficient on, and maybe it will make a playlist for you for your health, mental health.
Correct. We're trialing it at the moment in 80 clinics around the world. We're expanding to 200 clinics by at the beginning of the next year, and then we'll sort of perpetually. We're still fine tuning. We're very early stage. We're also sort of raising more funds to do all the technological things that we want to do. So it's a wonderful thing. People can find out about it at nadadigital.com. If you're interested, just go and have a look. NADAdigital.com.
Yeah, I'm sold, mate. I'm in. Sign me up and plug me in or whatever. I'll be a guinea pig. And I think that's
plug me in.
Yeah, but it sounds fantastic. I get it straight away. What you're trying to achieve there, and I think it's needed, right? And but talking about diets and macronutrient, I can't even say it, but diets, and the FDA talking about meat and veg, and it's interesting because they push that agenda, and milk we have to drink milk, and I, I've never been a keen milk drinker anyway, right? And let alone, it's just the fact for me knowing it comes from a cow, and I was thinking, well, I don't want to drink it. It's from a cow, right? And
was that always the case when you were a kid as well?
Not, it was pushed. You remember in schools? I don't know if it did it in your school. They used to give you a milk bottle, remember? And until Margaret Thatcher come along and thought it was too expensive, and she got rid of it. And so she potentially was a vegan, weren't she? She just didn't know, right? And she weren't all that bad, right? But and I think just as I grew up, I just didn't like the fact that it was sort of this liquid that came from this animal.
The secretion.
Just the basics of it, right? And I mean, and then I got friends who are vegans, right? That sounds terrible, doesn't it? I sound like a racist, I've got a black friend, I've got friends who are black, but I have got a friend who's a vegan who wasn't a vegan. He used to be a drinker, meat eater, and he's always sending me things and I've watched them, and I think once that ego is pushed to the bottom and think you don't know everything, Sat, watch this, you might learn something. And it makes all sense to me, why would I want to be eating this stuff from animals? It's just it kind of disgusts me slightly, I must admit. And I'm a person who kind of winds him up, I like vegan bashing sometimes. I
get it. There's a lot of people that enjoy resisting.
It's resistance.
Information.
Absolutely. It was just pure stupid resistance for something that could actually benefit me and make me healthier.
The same thing happened when they started trying to tell everybody that cigarettes are bad for you. And there was resistance in exactly the same way as you're saying. And look where we are 30, 40 years since.
And again, marketing of a cigarette that it can relax you. And the adverts, if you look at them adverts from the 60s, that Mad Men era, it's amazing how they would sell. And a Marlboro Man was the personification of that rugged macho man. He actually died, didn't he, of lung disease, I think.
Ironically.
But that was kind of the selling point to Americans, and we learned, don't we, that cigarettes are very bad. Don't smoke, kids. And And I think as we go on, we'll learn more, and we're learning that veganism is not a fad or a trend. It's actually the start of an awakening, really. I think, to realize, I'm not a vegan, by the way. For anyone listening, I still eat meat, but I think I'm on a point where I'm learning and understanding, and I think that's a start for anyone. If you start a little doubt in your mind, is this really what I should? This is good for me, or I think that's a start.
I mean, I became a vegan 2013, end of 2013, just after my ma transformed. And in 2014, one of my dear friends, the reason I have this blonde streak is because of a lady called Seema Jaya Sharma. And she died from breast cancer. But before she died, my hero, she educated me on nutrition. And so she taught me about all kinds of superfoods like spirulina and alkalizing the body and various other things about how the diseases breed in bodies and stuff like that. And the reason she was telling me about this is because I had multiple tumors in my head. I had 26 tumors in my head the entire time that I've been in the music industry since 1999. And I used to have these recurring things since 2000 to about 2013. And so she was telling me about this, over dinner, saying, these are the sort of superfoods I have that fight my cancer, that give me life, to give me more time with my kids. Because, she had a daughter at 9 and 18, and I was intently listening. And she knew that she was going to leave, but she just wanted more time with her children. She was 38. And so very young. And so it was through that sort of conversation and a conversation I had with a friend of mine, Rohit, who works with me at Liger Films, that, we realized the power of plants. And it was when I started talking to my tumors and my cells, because I just had enough after 16 years of just, or 15, 14, 13 years of just talking to these doctors about why the tumor keeps coming back every 6 months and why I keep having these procedures to have them removed. And then my lawyer, out of nowhere, out of all people, my lawyer was the one. And he said to me, Daddy, why don't you talk to the tumor? Talk to it. And I was like, this crazy eccentric lawyer is telling me to talk to my tumor. He's gone nuts. But then he told me how he talked to his hernia, and his hernia started giving him information. So anyway, I went home that night and I started to talk to the tumor, just like I'm talking to you, and nothing happened. I was like, well, that was a waste of time. And I went to bed. Woke up in the morning, opened the fridge, went to get the milk to put in my porridge, and I just couldn't touch the milk. Like my body just went, oh, that's gross. It wasn't out of date or anything. I just couldn't physically touch it. And everything dairy, just almost, my body was repelling. And it's almost, that was the response that my body was giving. I'm saying that in retrospect. At the time, I was really confused. I thought I was just being fussy. And then I naturally just became a plant-based, I guess what we call vegans now. And then I went on, people were laughing at me as well. I had mates that were laughing at me, just like you laughed at your friend. And then I thought, right, I'm going to prove that you can get ripped on a vegan diet. And that's when you may have seen me, that I started actively posting shirtless images of me showing, like, let me show you, you can do that. And that was just to my friends, to just stop them laughing at me, and it worked. And now I'd say 50% of them are all plant-based, and the other 50% are thinking about it. So
exactly. I mean, I'm on that. I'm on the section of thinking about it, and I've done periods of fasting. I've done 36 hours, and it's amazing. It's one of the when I explain that I'm going to fast to my friends, I'm like, what for? You know, you don't need to fast, and and I said, I need to. I've read so much about it, and I need to sort of get rid of any of these toxins in my system. And the only way to really purely do it is to fast, because you know nothing's going in, right, apart from water and some matcha tea. I don't know if you ever tried matcha, and ceremonial grade.
Yes.
But yeah, and see, I get into all this. I get into these things, Terry, and I brought the little spoon that's the right measurement, and the little mixer. All from Amazon.
A little action as well.
All from Amazon. That behemoth of consumerism.
Yeah.
So
mindful shopping.
Mindful shop. Yeah, exactly. But the first 24 hours were kind of hard, right? But it does really clear your mind, because you stop thinking about what am I going to eat. Have I got this? Do I need to cook this? Blah blah blah. That's gone, and you start having so much more time, and you realize how much your mind is consumed about food, and how much you think about food. It's just always there, right? And snacking, little snacks. We don't need to eat that much. I keep telling my family, right? We're always just snacking things. We're not going to starve, all right? They'll be fine. We'll be okay, man. And after the 36 hours, you have to kind of ease yourself back. You know this, right? You have to ease yourself back into eating, obviously for your digestive system. You don't want a kebab, right? Afterwards, the vegan kebab. You want to. I ease myself back in, but it's a great experience. And for anyone listening who's into training, and you know this, Terry, you don't lose your strength or your muscles in 36 hours, man. Right? Because if you lose your muscles in 36 hours, you never had any to begin with.
They weren't real to begin with.
Exactly, right? And so I've gone into this kind of mindset of it's mainly when I stopped drinking and doing other things that I started looking into the things that I put into myself. Information, food, all this kind of stuff, and that's kind of why I kind of was attracted to you, darling.
I'm attracted to you too.
Do you know what I mean? I think you start attracting yourself to these kind of people online as well. You start following them. You're thinking, I resonate with this person, and it's actually given me some real tips on life. He's not an influencer. God, Terry, imagine if they started calling you an influencer.
Where do I vomit right now?
Yeah. There's a right trend on Twitter. You're not that much on Twitter, I know. I know you just share your Instagram, but Twitter is a cesspool, man. There's things on there that are unbelievable. I mean, let's not get into it, but it just seems attention seeking, clout seeking. So someone put these comments, and it's to raise a reaction and retweets and likes, and And I always think, what's the end purpose? What are you going to get out of this? You might get 1,000 likes and retweets, but tomorrow you're, that saying, you're going to be yesterday's fish and chip paper.
Yeah.
That's
why I don't use Twitter. I just feel there's so many more beautiful things to be doing, and as you said earlier, we're consumed by consumption, and I think Twitter is just another form of consumption. It's like the image I get in my head is this big whale just soaking, with his mouth open, just taking in all the plankton of tweets, and it's just that whale is having this really non-nutritious meal right then. It's just like, I just want to get something wholesome in me,
Yeah, there's nothing. You get the
famous last words.
That was a great night, by the way.
Yeah, thank you for it. Yeah.
But there's something about this media. I think it's not good, man. The kind of stuff we're being presented. So I think we hurry up with that app. Then that music.
Yeah.
We need an antidote.
Guys, get the Nokia out. Guys, Sat said hurry up.
Winding up your connection. But look, Terry, coming towards the end, we could talk for hours. I'm on your vibe as we started
Appreciate
off.
You, man.
Yeah, and
I love talking to you, man. You're a beautiful soul.
I tell you a quick story. When we were doing these nature walks, my kids saw a tree. Right, and I used to be a guy that used to take the piss out of tree huggers, and they said, "Look at this tree; it's massive. Obviously, it's like it's been there thousands of years, right?" And they go, "How long's this tree been here?" I said, "Oh, for years, thousands of years." And they go, before me, before your mum, before your grandma, blah blah blah. When the dinosaurs, I go, "Well, maybe we don't know, right?" And they were just awestruck by this thing that has survived everything, and my little daughter, she sort of hugged it. And true story, right? She had a little, right? She obviously didn't get all the way around it, but I was like, "What are you doing?" She goes, "Look," I just want to. She just wanted to hug it, and we all hugged it, right? And there's some power in there, isn't there? In a tree, you feel it, don't you? And I'm not. For anyone listening, I'm not taking the mic. I did do this, right? And there's some power in an oak tree that's not been moved, and it's seen all sorts of nonsense and shenanigans, I'm sure, in them woods, right? And it's not moved, and there's beauty in that. So that's what I mean. I'm learning. I am developing myself as a person spiritually, And this is a guy that used to take the mick out of vegans, tree huggers, and even atheism. You're right. Everything becomes dogma, doesn't it? Atheism was science-based, a way of life, and they've turned it into dogma themselves. They've become a religion almost, haven't they, atheists? Yeah. And I think that's kind of a human nature. So we need to take a step back. And I'm kind of rambling now. I've been mesmerised by that tree that behind you. So I feel like hugging it. But look, Terry, we're coming towards the end. Honestly, it's been a real pleasure, and it was the conversation I thought we would have. I'll be honest. And I knew it would be deep and thought-provoking. It's going to be one of them conversations I'll think about once I've stopped recording. It'll be in my mind tonight.
Likewise.
Yeah, and so thank you. Is there anything you would like to say to all the people listening? I was about to say anyone listening. People do listen. There's quite a few of them. So if you want to send a message to anyone out there.
Yeah. First of all, I just want to say thank you for listening. Your attention, your time that you have on this earth, it's really precious. When you're in your body, in the human form, gratitude really gives you an opportunity to come out of your problems and start living life. Vitality is aliveness. So do what you can to feel vitality, to feel that aliveness running through your veins. And you'll have to experiment a bit if you haven't felt that in a while. Try things out. experiment. Children play in the mud, they play in the sand, they play in the water. Just because you're grown-ups doesn't mean you stop playing. We weren't born to work. We're born to play. Powers that be have created a machine in which we now work. We've become slaves to that machine. Play the game if you want to, but know it's just a game. But simultaneously play your own games of vitality and aliveness, whatever that is. Everybody should feel alive. And if you don't, resonate around people who are feeling alive. Because we are all part of one collective consciousness. We're all reflections of one another. I look at Sat, I feel a part of me in him. And I'm sure it's the other way around. We resonate together. And so create your golden circle and keep it tight. Keep that energy really, really good. If something comes in that doesn't serve you, don't be afraid to dismiss it and just put it away. Just like a bad smell. You put the trash in the trash. It's not for you. So just really sort of keep your life house kind of clean and odorless. And just know that we're always learning. We are not experts. No one likes to know it all. So it's really nice to be humble and just sort of just say, well, I don't know the answer to that. And make mistakes and learn from them. Make mistakes, learn from them. Make mistakes, learn from them. And your lives can be just so fulfilling. Take it from me. I didn't know anything about living in nature. When I, 2018, decided that I was going to go and live on a park bench, and then that took me into the forest 9 months later, I had no idea that 2.5 years later, I'd still be living in the forest. I just made mistakes. There were some ups and downs, but I resonated and I picked myself up every day and I thought, well, we'll give it a go. And there were beautiful sentient beings that came in my life that saved me. I'm open to receiving help. That's another thing that I'd like to say to people. Don't be afraid to ask for help. It's when we start cupping our hands and just asking for the universe. Sometimes we're too proud to do that. Please drop the pride and let me know how it goes. I'm here with you. If there's anything I can do for anybody, at any point, you can come and find me. Yeah, and just one love to everybody.
Terry, it's been fantastic having you on. I've really enjoyed it. I'm sure people are going to enjoy listening to this, and I'm going to create a very special promo somewhere along the line. Maybe that part of you singing, just to mess with people's heads.
We're going to sing it together.
Let's do it then.
Yeah.
How's it go?
Remember the words? Love is something. I'll sing it once by myself, and then you join in second time round.
Okay.
Love is something if you give it away. Give it away. Give it away. Love is something if you give it away. You end up having more. It's just like a magic penny. Hold it tight and you won't have any. Lend it, spend it, and you'll have so many. You'll roll all over the floor. For love is something if you
give it away. Give it away. Give it away. Love is something. If you give it away, then you'll
end up having more.
Thank you to the west side and the east side. That's our promo, man.
Yeah, man. Album out now.
Yeah. Thank you, Terry. Look, it's been a pleasure. That is going to be the promo, and I loved it. You're welcome to come on anytime, and we're going to meet up once you're in a location that's kind of near me. I'm going to come see you. I'm going to take some photographs of you, like I said I would, and just because I find you interesting, and we can hug some trees together. It'd be like a tree porn, and you know, I'm up for anything.
A tree hugging ceremony.
Yeah, exactly. And I'll bring some green tea.
Lovely.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Terry, look, and you look, take care, and it's been a real pleasure.